Okay, good morning. Firstly, thank you for coming to today's presentations. I'm sure you'll learn lots and lots of interesting stuff, which will help you formalise your strategy moving forward, I would hope. I've been working with public sector now for 30 years and 20 years within health. So those that remember the original NHS net back in 1995, when that was launched, we was engaged then, a couple of years before that came live. So working with the NHS and often inside the NHS. I'm on the advisory committee for the Internet First stuff with digital. So that's why I'm here today. What's it about? Okay, it's a published policy, it's a published strategy, and it's around what comes next. How do we enable our digital services to be available to the wider healthcare arena, us as consumers, be more consistent after HSCN close? Okay, but first of all, let's have a little look at the journey. So as you can see there, 1995 was when the original network went live. RedCentric have delivered next generation networks over that period of time, working with or alongside the NHS networks. We've built a cloud delivery and support model that is absolutely second to none and has enabled our customers to deliver their services to citizens, and will continue to do so in the internet world. But what does that mean? So HSCN's here. How long is it going to be here for? Well, it's going to be quite a while yet. And it's important to note as well that the HSCN network was never meant to be a long-term network. It's purely transitory. So if you look at the compliance model surrounding it, the connection agreement, the standards, they actually say, support of the network, the public internet, HSCN, PSN, N3, coins, all that type of stuff. You look at the technology within the network, it supports public addressing, IP addressing, version 4 and version 6. So when you move to the internet, well, there's very little mitigation to do. You look at the Internet First policy, that also underpins it. So HSCN has a very definitive life cycle. So the journey. So first of all, looking at the top, what has UK government said? They've actually said, and I like this term, they've actually said or confirmed using the public internet is okay. Yeah, okay. What's also been said? Well, NHS Digital have said, within 5 to 10 years' time, they do not want to have any form of private networking, period. And also Cabinet Office, who run the PSN, have said exactly the same thing. So between 5 to 10 years from now, there'll be nothing but the internet. It's about becoming ready. Okay? So you might think, well, what have we got to do? Standards, compliance, what have we got to put in place? The emphasis is, after HSCN, after PSN, security, compliance, service assurance, if you like, is absolutely key, because that new network medium is available to everyone. And we all see the press, we all see what goes on. It's about making sure that services are delivered in a secure manner. Okay? But I'll come on to security later on. First thing, let's look at the benefits of Internet First. Okay, so first thing, if you think of the NHS as an organisation, and you think of patients, consumers, us, as customers, what are we doing as customers now? Well, we're looking, we've got our mobile phones out, we're looking at Apple Health, we want to see what's going on with our records, we want to take part in our care. I looked at mine the other day, and it said, I'm allergic to penicillin. Am I? Didn't know that. And you actually find people now want to understand where their data is, take part in their care. I mean, you guys are the experts here. It's about bringing health closer together. And if you put it on the internet, use common standards, which I'll go into shortly, you actually bring a joined-up healthcare service using common set of standards, common application framework, if you will, which can be consumed by customers. Okay? The second thing is, and I'm sure you suffer from all of this stuff, so you have HSCN, maybe you have N3, maybe you have PSN and or Janet, and a coin, an IPVPN, and internet out the side. It's a whacking great list. You pay for that, you have to manage it, you have to procure it. That's really painful. And if you have services delivered, they've got to accommodate all of those networks. This is about moving it to a common platform, one network, one set of standards, easy consumption, easy offering. Improved interoperability. So I just think, Hall application X, I build my application, it does whatever it does. You guys here have got your own applications. Wouldn't it be fantastic if I could talk to your applications and you could talk to his, etc., etc., etc.? Now, we understand that's happening now, but wouldn't it be so 21st century to get that working holistically? Wow. And last thing, really bolts on to the first 3 points. It's around innovation. It's around looking at new ways to provide that care in an appropriate manner using the best tooling sets. Okay? So they're the main benefits. There are others, but they're the main benefits that are of focus. Right, how do you effect that strategy? It's really, really simple. 2 key elements. When you're designing, deploying, delivering, however you want to term it, new applications, those applications should be delivered by default on the internet. Simple as. That's the primary key. The second one is when you're changing applications. I've got a great example for you actually. When you're changing applications, they should be looked to be redeveloped to take that principle forward as well, be available on the internet. Iris is a prime example. Was HSCN, it still is, but it's moving more and more towards the internet. SIS, the smart card stuff that you guys use for NHS, that is now on the internet. There's a few cardiology applications on the internet. It's about making sure they move that way. And that term, or that process, is actually what Internet First is. Okay? What are the principles? 9 core principles. I like icons, I do apologise. So if we start from top left and work down. The first one, top left, we've covered it already. When you're delivering services, new services into the world, put them on the web. That's where they should be by default. Second one, here. And I've got some examples for this actually in radiology and cardiology. If there is an existing shared service available on the web, which replicates what an application does, which isn't web enabled, you should be moving or transitioning from this application onto that shared service and retiring that application. That comes from centre. Of course, that's a simple point of view. There's an awful lot behind the scenes, and you guys are experts in that field. But the principle is shared service that's not on the web, you should be looking to transition over there as soon as possible. Point 3, recycling, reusable. So not only is it a common internet, a common network, but a common set of standards. So you should be looking at using common APIs, subcomponents, sharing data. I'm not a data guy. Sharing how data applications speak together. Use that common standard so you can actually reuse components and not build in bespoke components. Make it simple, make it reusable. 4, again, we've covered this in the last slide to a degree. When you're changing applications, redelivering applications, upgrading applications, the principle in mind should be how do we take it from HSCN or N3 or PSN and be web enabled. But of course, when you're doing those transitions, one of the key principles is you must not introduce risk in that transition process and affect live services. Pretty obvious really, but obviously very key. 6th icon to the right, middle row. A data analysis. So it's all fair and well sticking stuff on the web, that's great, but how do you know it's appropriate? You analyse your data. What is it? What are the countermeasures and controls that need to be put in place? Should it go on the web? What does it talk to? You should be looking at a full analysis of the data and what it does, the data flows if you like, to ascertain what do we need to do, or you need to do, to make it web facing. What controls do you need to go in place? This one here. Again, when you design, develop, deploy, change applications, and I'm sure this happens already, your investment should include accessibility. So an example would be for partially sighted people. Accessibility should be built in mind. And I know it is in a lot of instances. 7, this one here. Business continuity. When you're migrating services or transitioning services, business continuity is key. You should be ensuring that your customers, your consumers, your patients, are fully aware of the continuity you have in hand. What happens if during that migration process, the whole lot fails? What have you got in place? Key principle. And last but by no means least, very, very obvious, have your users got the capability to use those services? Dead simple. Have they got, for example, or have you got, for example, sufficient bandwidth? What about resilience? Quality of service? Are all of those things in place? Okay. And they're the key principles. Now it says here, and the Secretary of State for Health has said, these principles must be mandated, enforced, before that date. Okay? Now, of course, someone mentioned this earlier on. Next Thursday, it could all change. HSCN could be extended for another 20 years. We might go back to, modems and DOS terminals. We don't know. But that's the current date for principles. Okay, so more from a compliance point of view now. Now, on HSCN, there's different sorts of organisations, broadly broken down into two aspects. So you have NHS, which are a lot of you guys, and NHS contains clinical and non-clinical areas. And it also covers service providers. So I know there's a few ISVs in here, application development organisations, CNSPs like us. Actually, before going on to that, CNSPs, this is light compared to what we've got to go through to provide you guys services. So be thankful for that. Okay. What have you got to do if you're an ISV? Well, first things first, on the connection agreement, you should be aware of this, but if you're not, please come and speak to me later on. I'm around all day. There are different versions of the connection agreement. There's the consumer one, we abide by GDPR, we'll do this, we'll let digital know what goes on, and the CNSP. And there are service provider variants, which cover additional controls, obligations, mandates, if you like. Make sure the agreement that you have signed is the right one, because the non-IT service provider version is missing an awful lot of those obligations. Okay. Right, so what have you got to do? Whether you're a consumer, whether you're a provider, first thing you've got to do is the DSPT, the Data Security and Protection Toolkit. Still labelled up beta, believe it or not, even though it's been live for about 18 months now, and it replaced the original IGT, or Information Governance Toolkit. That's your first port of call. It says also, or ISO 27001. Now, it's not really an option. If you do the DSPT, and I'm not sure how many of you guys have actually been involved in that process, first question it will say is, have you got ISO 27001? If you say, yes, there's my cert, covers all scope, the DSPT will come back and say, right, you haven't got to do those 30 questions, chuck them away. You met the obligations. Second question it will say is, have you got Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus? Is everyone aware of that? Yeah? Okay, cool. And again, if you've got that, it will say, fantastic. Out of the 100 or so obligations, chuck those 20 to one side. Ignore that. Okay? But you don't need those. If you haven't got either of those, it just means you've got to go through the DSPT, evidence each control, each clause, separately. Okay? So not mandated, but advisable. And of course, if you are a provider and you've got 27001, that scope should cover the services that you are delivering to the healthcare sector. I'll give you an example. You've got a network service, you've got an application called Application X, and you've got Application Y. If your certificate says, my network's covered, Application X is covered, but doesn't mention Application Y, that's insufficient. Yeah? That scope needs to cover end to end. Okay? If you haven't got 27001, or indeed if you have, you need to abide by what's called the BCS, Baseline Control Set. And really what that is it will say, how do you vet staff? What are the controls in place? Have you got a policy for X? How do you encrypt? And it's basically a set of controls. And if you haven't got that, I actually built a custom version working with Cabinet Office, which covers not just 27K, but also the SPF, Security Policy Framework. I can give you a document that covers all of those controls if it's any use. Pretty evident, really. If you have got a cert or are delivering a service, make sure it covers scope, which I've just said. And lastly, again, if you've got 27001, you have to be certified by an independent organisation. Make sure it's UCAS. And the reason I say that is, everyone familiar with CAS-T? No? Okay, CAS-T is a standard by NCSC which says a service provider guarantees their network is delivered in an appropriate manner, is secure, is available, etc. It's a really robust standard. We've got 3 of them. That relies on 27001. CAS-T is expiring next year. It's going to be replaced with what's called the TSR, which we'll probably do at a later date. TSR being telecommunications security requirements. Digital and Cabinet Office for PSN will not accept any certifications for 27001 as evidence if they're not UCAS certified. So check your provider. I mean, we deal with them day to day. We'll look at a cert and it will say, yep, certified by BSI. Tick, UCAS, bang. If you've got, should we say, a not so well-known, maybe slightly shady accreditation organisation for 27k, and it's not UCAS, we'll notify if we see it, but Cabinet Office, when you do your COCO, and Digital, if you have evidence to them, will actually look at that and say, no, that's no good. So make sure it's UCAS. The second thing is, on the last point, any service you deliver for consumption has to be externally tested by CHECK. CHECK is a certification which actually says, it's a pen test basically. It's an IT health check. You get an organisation come in, NCC, BSI, InfoSure, any one of those guys come in, they test your configuration, they do a pen test against your infrastructure in line with NCSE standards. That has to be done annually. And again, when CAS-T goes and you've got evidence your controls moving forward, there'll be more emphasis on who you had tested, what was the scope, have you mitigated accordingly. Okay? Again, I'm here all day, so I'll try not to dig into too much detail because I can see Simon glazing over now. But grab me and pull me to one side. Okay? Some of the key considerations just for ISVs. Build registers, build APIs, use common components. It's about efficient data management, non-reuse of bespoke services. Build it in. And from a security standpoint, I know it sort of sits out on the wind, and it's very, very evident. And you'll also say 1.2 is not the current standard. If you're putting stuff over the wire, which of course you will in an internet world, make sure it's TLS 1.2, at least. 1.3 is the current version. 1.4, I think, is imminent. Okay? I would say for consumers, so specifically looking at NHS, what do you got to do? We know this. You've got all your usual stuff. You've got your GDS stuff when you're procuring. So if you're taking a service, where'd you buy it from? G-Cloud, predominantly, CCS. Okay? Common framework there. Relevant digital cybersecurity standards. So connection agreement. It's pretty simple. And the DSPT. Again, very, very simple. NCSC have a set of standards. So you've got CIS or CIS 20, which you may know it as. You've got Gov UK standards. You've got the Orange Book stuff for risk. A whole load of standards. It's not for us to say what you should be doing. You guys know that very, very well. But again, speak to me. I'm here all day. So you should be looking at NCSC guidance and digital guidance for that matter, or Cabinet Office for PSN, on what you should be using to assess the services that you are deploying or consuming moving forward. And these four bottom ones. Now, it's important to say, it mentions here, NIST, which we all know about, OWASP for application security, and 27,000. It's important to say, these standards aren't to replace what you currently use in-house. They are there to supplement, enhance, work together, okay? So don't throw everything you've got away and put something else in. Look at what you need to do and supplement accordingly. Okay? Right. What's my message? So we're moving from HSCN. Security changed there an awful lot with I&M, NAS and everything else. PSN will be going shortly, a few years. Internet. Everyone's got access to the internet. The focus is on using a common network which everyone has got access to. It's about making sure you've got to focus on security, compliance, assurance, whatever you want to call it. It's more important than ever moving forward. Secondly, how can we help you? We've been doing this for an awful long time, and I'm very proud of where we are, RedCentric. RedCentric has played an integral part with the development of certain services over 25 years. We know our mustard, to coin a phrase. We can help you. We can tell you what's coming. How do you take advantage of it? How do you get ready for it? Okay? And what next? Come and have a chat. We've got a great team of experts up the back here. They're here all day. And I very much doubt it, if the question can't be answered out here, we've got a whole bunch of staff in there that are experts in this field. Speak to us. We'll help you through the next transition. Okay? Any questions? Don't all sit there quietly. You look like you're going to ask the question. Okay, right, I'm here all day anyway. Thank you very much for your time.